This episode of the Off-Road Podcast is sponsored by Warren, Medical Gear Outfitters, and Colby Valve.
Off-Road Podcast, episode 373, Gun Barrel Highway in a Jimny.
Tonight, Aaron drives a motor car, Jeremy dreams of being under the stars, and Ben brings home a friend, or is it a dumpster fire?
Welcome to the Off-Road Podcast, a podcast about everything off-road. We cover the news, review products, and interview people in the off-road industry. Your hosts tonight are Aaron, Jeremy, and my name is Ben, and welcome to the show.
We also have a guest, Ben. Ben, hello,
yeah.
we got a guest.
Oh yeah, Tony.
Sorry about that guy.
Yeah.
Teddy.
Hey, Tony, your
Hey.
screen's the wrong side way.
Yeah, around it.
There you go. Now I am
Oh, good.
and joining us tonight is Tony, the mighty mini overlander from down under.
Mighty
boys.
Mini.
The mighty mini.
Micro overlanding at its best.
Oh, I'm missing the video thing. God.
The weekend review is brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to have a casualty on the trail? Check out medicalgearoutfitters.com to get straightened out. Medical Gear Outfitters has everything you need, whether you're going out for the day or traveling on a year-long expedition. Head over there to get off-road specific kits that meet all of your needs. And while you're there, make sure you use Off-Road Podcast for 10% off. Well, let's start off with Ben. What have you been up to? Check out medicalgearoutfitters.com.
Oh, shit.
What's going on there?
Tony's watching it live.
Yeah.
I was just trying to flick the link over to my sponsor, but that's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about that. Nothing to see here.
Well, I brought home a friend, a very old friend, a dumpster fire at that too. I hit my
Oh,
buddy
really?
up, Andy Hoff from one of the brothers Hoff from the Gambler 500. We strapped down a 1963 or 5, somewhere in there, Jeep Kaiser J200, and brought home Vern. It was my grandpa's name, so I've dubbed him Vern. I hit up Andy once I got home. I was like, "Hey, Andy, do you have any? Does Warren still make parts for their this locking hub right here?" And got him more details, and they do. So,
Oh, wow.
Do you need them? Do they not work?
I haven't checked. I'm afraid to.
Oh,
But just in case I need them, I can.
Well, since you own a Jeep again, I vote for axle swap.
You know, that's been considered. So yeah, the tires are the original tires on the truck. They are some Sears Adventure Traction tires. There. So are these considered used tires, guys?
I
course
think
they are.
swap just for the tires. Pretty sure that's like what.
Yeah. So
what does the tread look like?
it's actually a really good looking tread. I don't have any pictures of it, but I mean,
Any dry rot?
Look at that dry rot right there. In
that's
that photo.
rot. Yeah. Oh, I know.
Oh
I just-
my goodness.
But here's the amazing part: those tires have held air for the last week.
Well, Ben, I think you should.
I'm so amazed. I'm so
I am
amazed.
So yeah, Vern's home and in the on the side of the house. My dad's getting ready to move, so I needed to get him home, and so he's sitting on the side of the house until other things are done first. As of currently, my house is 3/4 of the way done getting resided. I've got new gutters going on this week, and then I've got a couple quotes for shops coming in now. So, but one of the last ones isn't until like October 4th, which is 2 weeks away. So we'll see. I want to wait until I hear numbers before I decide on, okay, I'm going with this shop or this option. I have a budget I have to remain within. So that matters too, because the wife also wants to get a heat pump or a mini split put on the house. So it has to fit in that, but she wants to make sure that fits in that budget too.
Plus, you got to factor in the axle swap.
I'm not going to dump $10,000 just there. Where wait, is that $20,000?
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah, yeah. So I the engine has been sitting since 1995. There's much higher priorities.
LS swap.
LS swap. Yeah. No. So who knows? That's just it's the project that will probably take 6 years or more. But it's there. That's what matters. What about you, Aaron?
Well, my wife left me. She went to a women's retreat over the weekend, and I was stuck babysitting my kids. Ugh, man.
Is that really babysitting or just being a parent? I really hate when people say that I'm babysitting my kids. I'm like, no, these are my kids. I'm watching them.
I only call it babysitting because I know that it makes people upset or whatever. I think it's hilarious. Yeah, of course they're my kids, and of course I need to watch them and not babysit them. So what did I do? I took them to a friend's house and went and did some stuff.
There you
And
go.
then after that, we went to I picked them back up and I took my kids to an FFA auction dinner. For those of you out there that don't know what FFA stands for, it's Future Farmers of America. So these rural high schools have these programs where people, it's extracurricular thing where you take your livestock and you learn how to raise it. And they actually take you all around the country and you learn agriculture techniques and farming techniques and animal husbandry. I don't know why they call it husbandry. I think that's weird. But different things like that.
So it's like more
4-H.
more rural 4-H.
I don't know how it's different than 4-H, other than maybe 4-H isn't a school thing and FFA is a school thing. Maybe that's the difference. I don't know. But it was an auction dinner. It was kind of fun. I'd never been to one before. The only reason why I'm talking about this is because I wanted to tell you guys what they were auctioning off. So I'm going to say there were about 30 different things for the live auction. There was also a silent auction that had a ton of stuff, but the live auction had about 30 things. 2 of them were loads of gravel donated by a local quarry, so you could bid on a load of gravel. There were 2 quarter cows that you could bid on and cut up for your freezer. There probably 2/3 of it was alfalfa or hay or wheat or some sort of bale of something or another. So I just thought it was kind of funny. You go to an auction and you buy hay and wheat, or gravel and things like that. So yeah, it was kind of fun though. It was a good time. I definitely would go do it again. And then the next day, being the good father, I brought my kids over to my mom's house so she could watch them for 6 hours while I went on a 2-hour drive to go rent something called an Arcimoto motor car. I rented it with my uncle. He wanted to check them out. So it's this car here up on the screen. It's classified in Oregon as a motorcycle. So if you're listening on the radio, imagine a 3-wheeler, 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the back. It's front wheel drive. Both front tires are drive tires. And you sit jet fighter style, front and rear. It's got a windscreen. It's got a roof, all the headlights and turn signals. There is no doors on this bad boy, though. You can get them with half doors. So here's the one that I drove. You guys might like the rainbow color leopard print. That was the one I drove. This one had half doors. Yeah. I immediately sent pictures of this to our secret off-road podcast chat group, and someone asked me if I was going to take it off any sweet jumps. So I immediately jumped it on a speed hump in a neighborhood. So yeah, Rick says it's sexy. It definitely is. I'm thinking about wrapping my Nissan in these colors. That would really be super eye-catching.
Reminds me of what's that place called? Claire's, and those notebooks that they have.
Yeah.
I think Claire's. But I saw 2 of these not far from my house. The last.
So hold on, go back to that last picture.
Yeah.
You took that picture because there's a butt in the.
I'm laughing at that right now. I did not do that on purpose, but yeah, in the side mirror, there's a picture of a dude's butt in the side mirror. It's hilarious. So yeah. So this is a picture for those in Radioland again of the cockpit. It's like motorcycle type handlebars. It's got a motorcycle throttle. In front of the throttle is a little lever, which would be your brake lever on a motorcycle, right? That's a brake up there, but this is a regenerative brake on this one. So I actually did see the battery percentage go up when I was using it for long periods.
Nice.
Really?
Yep. And down in front of my red shoe, you can see the actual brake pedal.
Not like up,
Oh,
not
So-
like up since you started driving it, but just up, like it was going up while you were braking.
Correct. Yeah. So it started at 90%. And at one point I was in the real low 80s, but I was going down a big, long, windy hill and I was just on the brakes the whole time. And it went up 1% twice.
So the regenerative brake, is that kind of like, did it feel like engine braking almost or less?
It was more powerful than what I imagine engine braking to be, because I actually could take it to almost a complete stop. I did a lot of California stops with this. Rather than using the foot brake, I just used the hand regenerative brake, and it slowed you down to, they told us 2 miles an hour, but it was way slower than that. It was probably a half a mile an hour. And if there was any sort of incline, you actually didn't need the brakes at all. Going up an incline, it would slow itself down and start to roll backwards.
So don't lose your battery on the hill.
Yeah. Well, you've got the foot pedal brake that you
Oh.
can step on, which is a hydraulic brake. Yeah.
What-
So
what's-
here's a shot of me driving. I got made fun of. I was doing 27. I did end up on that big long hill. I did end up hitting 76 or 78 miles an hour in this thing. Super sketch.
So you mentioned it's classified as a motorcycle. So do you need a motorcycle endorsement or like a three-wheel endorsement?
So in this picture, you can see there's two versions of it. And I asked that question to them after we were all done. And so the covered one has seat belts, and it's basically two 3-point seat belts. Like when you're a kid and you sit in the middle of the back seat and you plugged in two seat belts across each other, so you're double buckled in. That's how these work. So you're double buckled in these. Plus, it has the integrated roll cage in it. So they say it's classified as a motor car, but the one in the background of this picture has no roll cage, has no seat belts. It's like a traditional 3-wheel motorcycle.
that one looks
And
like
so-
you're sitting on it a little bit more like a traditional road bike as well.
Yep, it definitely has a different seat. Yep. And that one you do have to have an endorsement for. So I think that must be how Oregon's legislation works, is that this one kind of works like a car. I don't know. The steering was really tough to turn at slow speeds. I talked to them about it. They said they're actually working on maybe doing some torque vectoring, so that because it's electric motor up front, make it so it spins one side more than the other to help you turn corners. So it was kind of a fun experience. The reason why we were looking at it was because my uncle has polio, and he wanted to possibly get something to drive around town. But here in Oregon, we still get rain almost as much as Washington. And with no windows, that makes it a sunny weather car only. And when he gets out of it, he has to have a walker or a wheelchair, and there is not a spot, definitely not a spot to put a wheelchair, maybe a walker. So
What's the range look like on those?
I don't recall what I heard, but I do remember a couple statistics, and it was that if you drove it at freeway speeds, you could drive it for 30 minutes at freeway speeds.
What's the recharge time on that?
Yeah, I don't know that either. I stopped asking questions after I realized that it just wasn't it. It's a city car barely. So, and it was honestly, it felt like something that somebody built in their garage. It looked really good, but it felt and drove like somebody built it in their garage. So, I don't have the skills to make something that nice, but it it wasn't very polished. A lot of rattling. It felt like they needed to take it to an alignment shop and have it aligned. Maybe because it was a rental, they get beat up a lot. Maybe other people jump them also. I don't know. Yeah.
What about stability? Like being a three-wheeler, how did you feel stability-wise?
I took it into a church parking lot that had a bunch of those islands, and I ripped it up. It has a lot of I don't know if it's oversteer or understeer. Yeah, felt like my Frontier. No, felt better than the Frontier because the Frontier's not driving right now. It it kind of plowed through the corners. It pushed wide in the corners. You couldn't really horse around on it because the back tire wasn't driven. It would just push a lot in the corners, and you really had, like, when I was horsing on, I really had to force those handlebars to get it to turn sharp at lower speeds. So it wouldn't be very fun for autocross.
So when you were talking about they were looking at some torque vectoring, does that mean it's like a locked front axle?
No, I don't think it's a locked front axle. Because nothing chirped as I drove around. It has to be an open differential. So, good job, Tim. You drove it to work today and home. I'm glad it made it both ways. Yeah. Anyways, it was a fun experience. It was my first time driving something that was all electric. I've driven some hybrid stuff before, but nothing that was all electric. So
Nice.
Rick's Jeep was driving great today also. That's good. Yeah. Oh, well, Jeremy, what have you been up to?
Well, I almost just went out for a very impromptu camping trip with my 4-year-old on last Friday. But I think I'm gonna go out this Friday.
You should go next Friday for the whole weekend.
I don't think I can because my wife works on Sundays.
Take the kid. Take all of them. Family trip.
Drop them off at your mom's house like I do with my kids. It's a great thing. It's a great family experience for everybody.
Yeah. But yeah, so he hasn't been on a camping trip since he was like probably a year and a half old, when he wasn't really moving around much. So we tried to go on one. I don't know, maybe it was last year, maybe it was the year before. No, it was definitely last year. That was the trip that my daughter fell into the river almost 20 minutes after getting there, and then they would not nap, and so
Yeah.
called it a day. Thought we don't want to do this at night. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have on my plan. Also, Ben, I think before I take off for the whole weekend, my wife's car needs to get out of the shop. Which,
Yeah.
we got.
That's what Uber. That's what Uber's for.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got a quote.
Yep.
How much is your sister-in-law paying of it?
Oh, that's a good question. I need to ask that. Quote was total quote was $5,000. So yeah.
What?
So what's happened here?
It's probably been like maybe 3 or 4 months that that it's been popping out of third and fourth gear. So they had to do a fair bit of recon work to figure out exactly what the problem was with third and fourth gear. So I haven't seen an itemized, and I didn't talk to the shop, and my wife didn't get an itemized breakdown of what it was all going to cost, but it's getting some sort of transmission rebuild. I don't know if it's getting a new transmission or just a rebuild, and then also new clutch, and then I mean, they're changing the oil, but that's like probably a pittance compared to whatever the transmission is going to cost.
Oh,
We lost Aaron or Ben.
Ben's gone,
Muted.
and Aaron's muted.
My dog
Yeah.
was barking. I had to mute myself.
Oh, that'll do it.
That'll do it. Um, the internet wants to know, Jeremy. The comment section wants to know if your Jeep drives.
My Jeep does drive. It's
Okay, so
the one
they say that
working right now.
that says that makes 3 out of 4 of us because Ben's Jeep does not drive, and then Tim goes on to say that that's better than the 0 to 1 for Frontiers on the show. So I'll have you know, Tim, that my Nissan does run, drive, and stop. I'm just struggling with the steering portion right now since it leaks the power steering fluid just as fast as I can put it in. So
Ooh,
yeah.
I've been there before.
Yeah.
And might declare that.
Almost. It doesn't leak as bad as Ben's brakes were leaking on that one camp trip, but pretty close.
I mean, it is just steering. I mean, you can't technically go without power steering. It's not the vehicle.
No, I would imagine though that it is hard on your power steering rack. So
Yeah, I may have done that in high school for a little while.
yeah. Well, Tony, we're going to talk about your trip here in a little bit, but have you done anything off-roady in the last little bit of time since that trip?
Yeah, so the trip ended a couple of weeks ago. We've been trying to obviously organise for myself to come on to the show for a couple of weeks now, but unfortunately I had to kind of go back to real work. And that meant getting in the way of all of the fun stuff. But since coming home, so we got back from that trip on the 6th of September, I believe. So in the last couple of weeks, I've been organising a camping trip for this coming weekend, where we will be heading down to one of the rivers that we like to frequent for a bit of a freshwater fishing competition between me and the boys. So it should be quite fun. We haven't decided on the exact location yet. We're split between either a place called Dwelling Up, which is one of my favorite places to go, which has the Murray River flowing through it, or we'll go to a place called Pemberton, which has the Warren River flowing through it. Either way, there is redfin perch, rainbow, and brown trout in both. And they are really spectacular places here in the southwest of Western Australia. Apart from that, though, a lot of freshwater fishing has been happening in the last couple of weeks, and we've been doing kind of day trips out to Dwelling Up to hit the river. A little bit of success on the first trip out, no success on Sunday just gone, where we unfortunately didn't really have any fish biting, and that was purely because I think the river has we've had more rain here than we normally do have in a long time, and I've never seen the river. What's going on with Ben? Dancing in and out. So yeah, the river here is really, really up, and that means that it's raging at the moment, making fishing a little bit harder than normal. There he is. But yeah, so hopefully this weekend we've got that. But post coming back from the trip, the main thing has actually been vehicle maintenance, cleaning the car, and everything like that. And as you guys will see when we talk about the trip itself, that in itself is a Herculean task to try and to get rid of all of that red dirt from the center of Australia. So it just doesn't come off, unfortunately. But yeah, so there's going to be a fair bit of cleaning for quite a while, and then getting prepped for November, which is going to be the Full Drive adventure show here in Western Australia, where I'll be part of the content creators and Overlander hub. And so I need to basically spend the next couple of weeks after the next couple of camping trips getting the vehicle prepped for that one.
Nice. I gotta say, I just need to bring this up. Ben's photo is making me really tired. But Ben, for those listening to this audio version of the podcast, Ben's background is a picture of his Sears Adventure traction tire. So kind of funny.
Looks good.
Go prepared.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Patch. Head over to patriotpatch.co and check out their selection of great patches, shirts, cleaning mats, signs, and stickers. You can also join the Patch of the Month Club for $15 and receive a patch, matching sticker, and artist proof each month. I'm going to jump here to the comment section before we talk about Patriot Patch and mention that Tim said that he was at an indoor shooting range near his house called Shooter's World. And he says that they were doing some gun safety class there, and in the showroom they had a Patriot Patch display. So kind of neat.
It's also he's in Goodyear, Arizona. So is he out shooting tires?
Could be. And Tim also wants to know, Tony, what time is it and what day is it in Australia?
I am from the future. So it is Tuesday and it's 10:30 in the morning.
That's funny because I looked at the last time you were on the show and we said something about you being from the future. Yes.
I always say
Our guest Tony, who's currently in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Believe me, everything is going to be okay. It all works out, and
What's the lotto for today?
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
What were yesterday's lotto numbers? If you could tell us that part, at least that's all I need.
Imagine if that's how it worked. If someone
Oh
in a
my
different time
goodness.
zone was actually just in the future and they got it'd be like Biff out of Back to the
you
Future.
are actually in the future, just not our.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just not your future. I'm on a completely different timeline. But yes, no. The one of the things about being in Western Australia is that there is a 2-hour time difference between us and Sydney, and in summer they have daylight savings, so they then go an extra hour in front as well. Now the problem with that, future Tony, will they sell Jimnys in the States? Unfortunately, no, they'll never do that because you unfortunately dogged Suzuki so hard in the past that they don't want to have anything to do with you. But yeah, so with that 3-hour time difference, that means that doing anything here in Western Australia means you've only got like short windows during the day to be able to kind of work with the Eastern States guys and stuff like that. So it can be a little bit of a pain. But no, it's kind of funny actually. Now that was that Tim? Was that the comment from? So funny that you mentioned that, Tim. Now, ever since I started the YouTube channel and the Instagram and everything like that, I actually have quite a sizable following from my US brethren, and the first thing that I get is, I wish they sold these here, I wish they sold these here, I wish they sold these here.
Yeah.
And it's a real shame that they don't, because I think that the way that the American market in regards to accessories, aftermarket parts, all those kinds of things really does take some of these vehicles. I mean, for example, the way that the Jeep kind of aftermarket parts market is phenomenal. The way that the Jimny would go if they had access to this vehicle would be tip top. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, back to Patriot Patch. We appreciate those guys. We appreciate them being our sponsor. And don't forget that they made our patches for us as well.
Yep. And they also make shirts. Don't forget that.
Yep, shirts, gun cleaning mats, signs.
Yep.
Jeremy, can you show us do you mind holding up the patches, our off-road podcast patch and our switch panel patch?
Oh yeah, I got them right here. Are these that?
Yes, that's them right there. Yes. Oh, there they are in Ben's headliner. Yeah. So yeah, make sure you write into us. We are getting emails often from people and from around the world asking for patches. So if you're looking for patches, don't be afraid to hit us up and we will get you something.
Yeah, I just went and got a quote to ship some to the UK, which was like, what? We have listeners in the UK? Like, I don't know. It still blows my mind that there's some dude in Australia that listens, some dude in Canada, some dude in the UK. Like,
I think we got somebody in Croatia also.
yeah. I don't know. It's cool that people all over the world celebrate the same thing we do, which is enjoying the outdoors in a vehicle like a faithful Toyota, or maybe a Jimny.
And if you own the off-road podcast patches before Jeremy from the off-road podcast, make sure you get in now.
Yes. Tim is dogging on me again. He says, yeah, the Equator was so bad we had to kick the entire brand out of the country. So the Equator was a rebadged Nissan Frontier. So there's that.
I figured what it was all the original sidekicks that were rolling over in America, like bashing on Suzuki.
Fake news.
Fake news. You better switch hats when you say fake news.
That's it. Yeah, I'll leave that hat back there. But the funny thing is that is actually that was a campaign that was waged by Suzuki's competitors, where they got together, and in particular from GM, and they put out a bogus report saying, so I don't know what you guys call it in the States. We call it a lane change test, where the vehicle, when you're having it re-engineered, depending on suspension upgrades and whatnot, like you do the lane change test. And they were saying basically that the Samurai was dangerous that it was just going to roll over and, explode into shards of depleted uranium and all those kinds of things. And they jazzed it up in such a way that it was purely false. But when they went to court, and they said, Suzuki took them to court and said, what's going on here? They retracted it, but the report was out. The damage was
done. Yep.
That's it. And so 2013, I believe, Suzuki Motor Company pulled out of the States altogether. And the only thing you guys get there is motorbikes and outboard motors. So
there you go.
Yeah. Actually, here's something. Do you guys get the Land Cruiser over there? The Toyota Land Cruiser? Yeah. So do you get like 79 series Land Cruisers and so you don't get the 79?
We don't get anything fun Land Cruiser, just the base model. That's right now, what is that, $100,000 for one? And actually they're not make them anymore here in the States. Last year.
Yeah, one of my very good mates, Milo from Jetfish Australia, he has a beautiful 79 series Land Cruiser with a full MITS alloy canopy tray on it. This thing, it looks like it's ready to go to war. It's a tank, and it is a beautiful vehicle. But so it's interesting that you guys don't get that over there. Because do you get the Ranger?
We do now. We do now, but it took like 8 or so years for us to get the Ranger that you guys had.
Right, because the new Ranger's just been released here,
and we're gonna get that. We're gonna get that though,
with the funky little Tron headlights at the front. The squarish looking daytime driving lights, and then I believe that's a bit of a throwback because I am under the impression that some of the F trucks are now doing the same thing at the front there. So
a couple of years.
Yeah, they're like C-shaped lights.
C-shaped lights. Yeah. Looks like Tron.
Yeah.
So time for some news.
Have tire troubles ever left you deflated? Colby Valve has got you covered. Ever have a valve leak? Colby Valve makes reusable and easily replaceable valve stems that don't require you to remove your tire from the wheel. They work with your off-road rig, ATV, side-by-side, commuter vehicle, or even your tractor. Never be left stranded again because of a busted valve stem. They also have a tire repair kit for those punctures that keep you away from doing your favorite thing, wheeling. Make sure to check out colbyvalve.com or ask for them at your local off-road products store.
Jeremy's messing up the show already.
Well, our first news story here is, hey, we've got a We've got a Twitch streamer commenting. This is a absolute first since we've been on Twitch. Polar Knight says, I love the podcast. It's a perfect evolution of beard growth. From short to longer to longer to longer. Yeah, and
I only just cut mine.
yeah,
I had to.
We've
had
it quite a bit longer. Yeah. So this first news article is from Yahoo News. I'm not sure how Yahoo is still in business, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. The iPhone 14 gets satellite coverage. You guys might not have been sure where I was going to go with talking about an iPhone on the off-road podcast here, but yeah, the new iPhone 14 is going to get some satellite coverage. So they're going to be cutting into Spot and Garmin InReach's market with their cell phones. So just some stats about the phone. The iPhone 14 is going to have a 6.1 inch display. The Plus model is 6.7. It's got an A15 bionic chip that gives it an all-day battery life. Okay, now that the dumb stuff is out of the way, Global Star, the GSAT, will be the satellite operator for Apple and their new SOS feature. It's going to launch in November. You get it for 2 free years when you buy the iPhone 14. It says that it includes custom radio frequency components, new software designed entirely by Apple, enabling emergency SOS via satellite on their new phones. And it said that Apple shared plans to take up 85% of Global Star's satellite network capacity for their emergency messaging feature. So that's all we know. A lot more out there is speculation. Rick in the comments says maybe it's an emergency locator only, no communication. Polar Knight says SOS feature, it's great so that they can track us. I'm pretty sure they're already tracking us, but maybe they can track us when we're out of cell range with this feature. So I don't know. We'll see when we get more news about it. I'm curious if it will do just an SOS feature or if we'll be able to do more than SOS with it. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they had. Oh, you go. Sorry, Matt.
I was just gonna say, from what I've heard, is that Apple's it's only gonna be as an emergency thing, not like two-way. Like it's gonna be like, hey, I'm in trouble, send help type stuff.
Right. So I'm interested to see whether or not it's going to integrate things like HEMA maps. Do you guys have HEMA?
We don't really use much of HEMA maps over here. I know that HEMA actually did a big tour through North America and did a big mapping trip, but
yeah.
I don't feel like HEMA is something that's used over here.
Right. Yeah. We use it heaps here. Especially as soon as you get out of the major cities and stuff in Australia in general, you lose cell phone coverage pretty much instantly. And because we've got that giant center of the country where it's just desolate, nothing out there, having a sat nav type unit, whether that be a HEMA map or the Garmin Overlander or something along those lines, I believe we use it probably quite a bit more. But it'd be interesting to see whether or not if a satellite capable iPhone would have that same capability.
Yeah. So I was just looking up to verify. So Global Star is what Spot is on, which was what Jeep uses. So it's going to use up theirs. It's not going to bother me with my Iridium with a Garmin Mini. It's a different satellite system.
Right. Yeah. There's a few of them out there.
Yeah.
So I actually heard a rumor that Garmin and HEMA are going into cahoots with each other to make a new Garmin Overlander.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Rick must have an inside channel. He's talking to some of the Chinese kids that are building these phones. He says, so far SOS only, like a EPRB on a boat. It may evolve. And Polar, yeah, them EPIRBs. Polar Knight says, so like a satellite phone. Not at this point, especially if what Rick is saying, it sounds like you just push a button which sends out a signal, and then people come to that location. They have no idea why you push the button until they get there. So
it's kind of like a Gen 1 spot.
Yeah, there used to be those personal locator beacons. So and that's how everything started. So, but they've evolved to let you send simple messages, and now the fancy ones you can text back and forth. Yeah.
Actually, that's Aaron with his Elon satellite dish.
Yes. Can you take that Starlink like out on a trip with you, or is that just like fixed to the house, or what's the situation there?
They're fixed to houses, but I know that you can buy a quote unquote RV subscription, which will allow you to use it anywhere you want. But I did hear that when you are using it in its RV function, if bandwidth starts getting sucked up by other people out there, if you're on, because you're jumping into somebody else's satellite, it sounds like they only have X number of spaces per satellite. So if that satellite starts getting overburdened, they will start slowing down the RV users before they slow down the other users.
Yeah. So you get throttled pretty quickly then.
Yeah.
Polar Knights asks if the button is a pay to play button, otherwise it'll just be a troll button, and that's what it sounds like. You're gonna have to enable that ahead of time. But I mean, if you're out on the trail and you plan on being out the trail, or well, it's hard to say with those Apple users, like, hey, I'm gonna go get Googled and end up on top of a mountain pass because that's what Google told me. It's kind of like a safety feature. I think you're going to have to consider it more of a insurance plan for being out in the woods.
Yeah.
Well, the next article here is from CarBuzz, and apparently not all Jeeps are going electric. As of per last week, at least here in the States, we've got the Wagoneer S, the Recon, but not the Gladiator. The CEO, Chris Munier, is that how we say it? Munier?
Good enough.
Yeah. Said that he doesn't see the benefit in the current market. Maybe a smaller truck to compete with the Maverick, but there's no current plans for the Gladiators to go electric. We might see a 4xe maybe, but nothing like full electric like we're seeing with the Recon, which is a unibody. The Gladiator is a frame-on body, and he just doesn't see any reason or potential in it, which makes sense. It's a lot harder to build around that versus. So yeah,
I don't think it'd be harder to build. I mean, that's what a lot of those delivery trucks are. They're like a ladder frame vehicle. They just stuff the batteries in the middle.
I wonder if you would have to beef up that Jeep's frame more to handle that, and like if they want to deal with the tooling and all that, because you remember early on the guy who had the wrong shocks on his Jeep and he bent the frame.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if maybe they're worried about that with the extra weight, the batteries, and you've got to upgrade this and that, and then it's just a whole new vehicle.
I think my big concern when it comes to electric vehicles going off-road is, first off, there's going to be an issue with range and being caught out at the end of your battery life, but also if you're into doing anything that involves a water crossing, I'd hate to see what would happen to a lithium battery if it got waterlogged. It'd be like sitting on the square boot of C4 I'm tipping. So yeah,
the lithium batteries are sealed, so you're not going to have to worry about it getting
submerged. As long as something hasn't happened that you don't know about and it's come unsealed somehow.
True enough.
Yeah, you take a hard knock or something, or and I'll cover this when we talk about my trip. You get some pretty heavy corrugations and vibrations through a vehicle, and it's amazing what happens.
Yeah, from what I've heard is like the Tesla's belly pan is a lot thicker than a lot of the skid plates on our off-road rigs to help protect those batteries. Right. Would be good. And then I've got a question here from Tim. How do I like my Garmin device? He's thinking of getting one for when he's at a cell phone range. I love mine. I keep it on the super basic plan, when I'm not going out on trips. So it's good for when I'm not planning on being out in the woods, but it's there in the Forerunner ready to go if I need it. Or I'll move it over to whatever vehicle if we're going camping in, like, say, the minivan or something, because we do that every now and then. You're muted, Jeremy, so nobody cares what you have to say.
Or it's in Jeremy's Jeep and then the mail.
Yeah, it gets mailed.
Go prepared with Warren Industries. They produced the first recreational winch in 1959 and lead the industry with their dedication to quality and reliability. When you dig yourself in deep, make sure you have the right tools to get yourself out. Get Warren equipped and go where others can't. Now, let's get ready for adventure and head into our main topic.
Did you know that Warren makes their things for classic vehicles still? Yeah, their locking hubs, amazing. They still make parts for those.
Or you can just axle swap it, get new parts.
There we go. Axle swap everything, and your volume is low.
Is it really?
Now it's not. Yeah.
I was just talking away from the microphone, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Tony, last time you were on the show, you were the mighty Jimny. Now you are the mighty Overlander. I'm not sure.
It's been almost a year.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I was on for the Jeep one as well. Remember when we did the Jeep comparisons with the poor, medium, expensive Jeep run?
That's right.
So this is the third
Yeah.
time on. This is the third time on.
Yeah.
And
that's true. Yeah. I forgot about that one. Yep.
But
but
your
name has changed a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I initially started off as the mighty Jimny back in January of 2021. So I've been at it now for just over 18 months, coming into the 19, 20 months kind of range. And initially it was named that because I didn't really put much forethought into maybe what happens if I don't drive a Jimny in the future or something like that. So I felt like all of a sudden, oh, hang on, I'm a bit pigeonholed here. And whilst there is, this isn't me getting a different car, guys, I swear it. There's no intention of getting a different Jimny, a different car, maybe a different Jimny. There's apparently a 5-door Jimny coming out next year that I'm interested in looking at. Yeah, that's right. It's about 30 to 40 centimeters longer. So I'm not sure what that is in the devil's measurement, but yeah.
That'd be a yard.
A yard.
Oh wait, no, you said
30 to 40 centimeters. Right. I think 30 centimeters is about 12 inches. So yeah, about just over an extra foot in length.
So would you then go from micro overlanding to tiny overlanding?
Macro overlanding? Don't know. Not sure. Like, so it's not something that I'm definitely going to set in stone at the moment as an upgrade, but because there's also another vehicle that's potentially coming out, but I'm waiting to see what that one looks like, which is the Pajero Mini, which is a new short wheelbase Pajero coming out, which Andy would be very happy about if it comes to the States, that's for sure. But yeah, so I did change the name, and the main thing was if there is ever a change to the vehicle, then I'm kind of covered there. But also my circle of friends is not limited to Jimny owners, and a lot of the guys that are regulars on my YouTube channel, we've got a Hilux guy, a Triton guy, a 79 series Cruiser guy, Ranger guy. I've got a Jimny. There's a couple of other Jimny guys, but there's not all Jimnys, and it's just about the overlanding experience in general here in Western Australia. So I changed the name and changed the logo, and I think it's actually helped a bit, and it's opened it up a little bit to other 4-drive owners as well.
Wasn't there also you were talking about fishing more on your channel, right? Because that's your other hobby.
Yeah. So look, my main interest is obviously 4-driving and camping, overlanding, and those kinds of things. But to to jazz it up a little bit when I do get to my desired destination, which inevitably, living on the coast of Western Australia will either be a coastal spot or down to one of the dams or rivers. Inevitably, I decide, I feel like, not catching fish, but trying for it anyway. And essentially, I kind of go down that line. And look, the Tony family curse is we can't find frozen fish at the frozen aisle of a supermarket. But really, when it comes down to it, it's more something just to kind of bit of an activity to jazz things up a little bit. So there was a boat at one stage, and I was going to call it the Mighty Tinny, and I sold the boat. I didn't even get it. I shot one episode with it that never made it to the channel. I kind of worked out that the enjoyment versus effort ratio of owning a boat was considerably out of whack for me. And I'm just not really a boatie. That being said, there is another, yes, definitely 100% fishing, not catching. Generally speaking, however, there is another plan, and that other plan is to get a fishing kayak, which is much more inside the range of the Jimny to tow around. And so we'll probably use that a little bit more to. The Jimny used to be a boat, that's correct. So I had to beat the panels out of an old Stacer Sea Sprite. But the plan is, basically, if I go back down to the watercraft side of things, it will be just a little kayak, fishing kayak.
So if I remember right, the first time you were on the Jimny, your new Jimny was pretty new to you. So how has the Jimny been?
So the first time I was on was almost a year ago now. So the Jimny was only, I think it was about 20 months old at that stage. It wasn't even hitting the 2-year old mark. So now I'm kind of pushing well and truly into the 3-year old mark. It's done 75,000 kilometers now. So I'm not sure what that is in miles, but it's ticking along now quite nicely. It's been an absolute weapon, to be honest. The upgrades that I've done since the first time I was on, so from casting my memory back, I'd done the suspension upgrade, which was a 50mm Ironman lift, the ARB front bar, which is the Summit bar, full hoop Summit bar on that one, with the intensity spotlights also from ARB, and then the front runner roof rack and a Rhino rack 270 batwing awning. And that was pretty much kind of it. There was a couple of other little things like a front rudder ladder on the rear door, but that was kind of it. I hadn't really done much else. Since then, my man Andy came through with a worn 8,000 pound, it's a Evo 8S, 8,000 pound synthetic rope winch for the front. So you're muted now.
And then you're muted, Aaron. And welcome to the family, Tony.
Yes, definitely.
They didn't send you a ATV winch. They sent you a full-size vehicle winch.
So the plan actually was to try and get my hands on the Axion 55S, which is an ATV winch, because first off, 5,500 pound would have been more than enough to pull the Jimny out of the squirt if I needed to. And it was only about 14 kilos on the front. Unfortunately, Warren was having a little bit of a, if he could pull 4 Jimnys, they basically having a bit of trouble in trying to get their hands on a donation model of the Axion. But the 100% next best thing, which is certainly not a downgrade in any way, shape or form, is the 8,000 pound Evo 8S, which is, so I've done a full install video on that one on the Mighty Overlander YouTube channel, and it fits in absolutely perfectly. We didn't even have to take the bar off the vehicle. We were managed to just, she just right up in there. Haven't had to use it yet though. The Jimny just doesn't get bogged, and but one day I will, and when I do, it's going to be a life changer. So it's going to be absolutely fantastic. A lot of the guys, so for example, this one here is Dave Howie's Wild Track Jimny. He's got the Iron Man front bar and the Iron Man setup on that one, which is another pretty cool setup that the guys will go through here in Australia with their things. And there's obviously my one there. You can see
there we go.
Tasty looking wall on the front.
I clicked on the wrong one, so yeah, you can barely see the winch in there. It's tucked in real well behind that.
Yep. So even and with that, it's just basically a little flip on the number plate there, so that flips up, and then you can access the winch as well. And you can see just above my number plate on the left and right hand sides, probably not particular this particular photo, but you can actually open up that little grill, and that gives you access to your winch clutch, so you can spool it out. Yeah, very handy, very
That's
handy.
clever.
And the way that the winch control box actually mounts up in there, you can't even see it poking out the top there. It sits perfectly flush with the bottom of the bar there. So yeah, it's nice and hidden away. No restriction to airflow or anything like that for the radiator. Yeah, absolutely brilliant fit. So that's it. And speaking of my sponsor, there's my sponsor in the chat now. Get a and that will probably be Lou, the Instagram and social media guru over there at Wild Track. So hopefully, they enjoy the show. But
how do you like the controller for the Evo?
So that's both a wireless and wired system, and it is basically like the little pistol grip style controller. The good thing is there's plenty of cable length on there, so if you are out bush, got yourself into a position where you needed to winch yourself out, and you go to hit the wireless controller and you find out that your controller's flat, you can actually plug her in, and that way you're good to go as well. And that's the beauty of having that dual system there. The winch cable's long enough to actually feed it back into your window if you need to do it that way as well, which is absolutely brilliant. And access to all of the winch controller box and to plug it in. Yeah, really nice and simple. I was really impressed actually. I was I won't lie, I was a little bit hesitant about putting an 8,000 pound winch on a Jimny. But now that it's on, it actually plants the front of the vehicle really well. And weight wise, it was only an extra 7 or 8 kilos heavier than the Eva, the Axion anyway. And I think that's also in part because of being a synthetic rope rather than a cable winch. You're going to lose a fair bit of weight there by not using a big heavy steel cable, which is always handy. But it looked absolutely brilliant. So that's gone in. Then the custom off-road bash plate that went on as well. The Bay House recovery points up the front from a a Queensland brand. So that's right. And so that's absolutely that they absolutely brilliant as well. Then K-On Australia, which is another Australian 4-drive brand. They fitted me out with a full cargo system in the back where they have the Molly panels on the windows, a full internal shelf, as well as a gas bottle holder on the back there, on the back wheel. And what else happened? The GME radio's gone in. And I think that's about it. Yeah. So she's definitely coming. Oh, sorry. 2 other things. The snorkel's on from a company called TJM, and also the extended range fuel tank, which was a pivotal part of this particular trip that we'll discuss, which extended my fuel capacity from 40 liters out to 80 liters, basically doubling my fuel range. Yeah. So that was absolutely brilliant. And that's from a Australian brand here called the Long Ranger. So yeah,
I like that
I
brand.
believe isn't that for us Long Range America? I think that's the same brand.
Might be. So they manufacture those ones here in Melbourne, in Australia here. And one of the issues actually was trying to get my hands on one of those tanks. And if it wasn't for my sponsor Wild Track Leisure Australia, I wouldn't have got my hands on one. But Dave over at Wild Track, a man of many talents and man who knows everybody in the industry, just made a phone call, and it turns out that one of the dealerships had squirreled one of these Long Ranger tanks away for me, which was really good. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a delay. So there's the one part in this tank that gets imported from overseas that they're having trouble getting their hands on at the moment. So there's a backlog of anywhere up to 5 months on them. So unfortunately, that's a bit of a issue that quite a few companies are seeing at the moment with supply chain issues and whatnot. And it's definitely being down in Australia, being so isolated from everybody, shipping is a huge part of that. And yeah, so if there's any disruption to shipping, then it hits us pretty hard down here. There's nothing that they can do about it, unfortunately, but it is just the nature of the beast. Yes.
So let's talk about this trip. So who set up this epic adventure and how did you get invited?
So like I said before, I started in the micro overlander content game, I think it's about 20 months ago now. It was January of 2021. And as a process of going through that, I was lucky enough to be on Ronnie Dahl's show, Modified, as episode 99, which, might I add, got voted as the favorite episode of the last 100, which was brilliant.
Nice.
So I think they underestimated the cult following of the Jimny crowd out there, which was absolutely fantastic. So thank you to all of my my Jimny brethren out there that and sisters that voted for me on that one. So thank you. So I was on that, and as part of that, that's where a lot of my exposures actually come from, because he's obviously got such a big platform and he's so popular here in particular in Western Australia. He really gave me a bit of a leg up there in regards to the exposure of my not just my car, but also my presenting and my channel and everything like that, which is really good. And as a result of that, I was approached by Wild Track Leisure Australia about this amazing trip that they had planned. And that was to go from here, where I am in Perth, Western Australia, all the way to Yalara, where Uluru or Ayers Rock is. And it was turned out to be a 4,500 kilometer round trip, which works out to just under 3,000 mile round trip. And I think it's 2,800 miles. And yeah, it was an absolutely epic adventure. So they approached me to be part of the media team to help narrate and present the trip documentary for both Wild Track. And then I've also shot my own stuff in the background as well for some episodes on the YouTube channel.
So how long did the trip planning take for that one?
So Dave and the team over at Wild Track had actually been planning this one for almost 2 years. This was a long trip. Yeah. So part of the reason was not being able to do the trip. So there was quite a few guys that had their fingers in the pie in regards to the trip side of trip planning side of things. There was Dave, who is one of the he's the brand owner of Wild Track, and his best mate, which is a fellow called Tom Perrott, and they were instrumental in the actual organizing and planning of this trip. And this group of friends that's slowly grown over the years has been thanks very much, Lou. But yeah, so this group of friends had been going on trips every year, and each time that they went on these big trips, they would get a different vehicle. They would get like a different theme for the actual camping trip, and they do epic trips. And this time it happened to be the Jimny that they decided to go with, and in particular the JB74 Suzuki Jimny there in the which was released in 2019. When they saw this vehicle first come on, they're like, that's the vehicle that we're going to use for the next trip. And then promptly COVID happened and put a big kibosh on anyone going anywhere for quite a while. So it kind of got put on the back burner. But in the background, the guys were planning away for this particular trip. So yeah, it was almost 2 years in the planning. And I was very lucky because I got approached in, I think it was about with 2 months to go. So yeah, I kind of ended up jumping on the tail end of that process. And the main part, my input in regards to the planning was more from a subject matter expert on loading the Jimnys up and what people should be taking with them and what mods. And once I came on board, I would constantly get messages from quite a few of the guys that took part in this trip on, hey, Tony, what mods should I be looking at? What this should I get? What this should I get? Because the guys actually only took delivery of their Jimnys about 4 or 5 weeks prior to the trip actually commencing. So there was a lot. Yeah. These are a lot of the brand new. Yeah.
That's like a SEMA rush right there.
Oh yeah. So so a lot of the guys, like, I was getting messages all through the week, what's the best roof rack to get? What's the best, suspension and this, that, the other. And there was a lot of guys that went down one particular route, which was supported by one of the car dealerships over here, Suzuki Osborne Park, and they fitted them out with a whole heap of Ironman gear and the Long Ranger fuel tanks, Torquet snorkels and things like that. And then a few of the other guys wanted to be a little bit more unique with it. And they went a completely different route. So there was one particular guy, Russell Collins, who went a completely different route to everyone else. And he went and got like an AFN bull bar and completely different spotlights and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was, I was certainly, by the time it came to the commencement of the trip, which was the 19th of August, we had 22 JB74 Jimnys taking part in this epic trip. And the premise of the trip was one man, one car, with a few support vehicles in the back, and the Jimnys themselves being very self-sufficient, and having that true micro overlander setup to take you from Perth all the way through to Yulara. Yeah.
So what was the destination, and how did it get its name?
So Yulara is pretty much, in the center of Australia, not in the dead center. It's a little bit closer to, so there you go. You can see on the map for those that are listening. If you draw a line right down the center of Australia, you're looking relatively close to that, maybe a little bit off to the left. And it's a town that is just on the other side of the just on the other side of the Northern Territory, West Australian border. And that's where Ayers Rock is, or Uluru, which is its First Nations name. And that is a very popular tourist attraction here in Australia. So the two big rock formations are Uluru and the Olgas as well. And they actually formed millions of years ago when that part of the world was underwater. And basically they've found evidence of fossilized marine life and everything like that all around the area. And then when the sea had receded and the continent of Australia broke away from Pangea, you then had all the softer sands and rocks over millions of years dissipate away, and what was left over was Uluru and the Olgas. And Yulara is the town that sprung up just there and is a bit of a tourist destination.
I find this map kind of interesting. You can see that the green pins on here, I am assuming the moon with the stars means that's where you're sleeping. And
Yes.
The very first one from when you leave it's not too far away, but then there's not another one for a long time. So that makes me think you had some pretty good open highway. And then they're just stacked in there deep, like you didn't make very far for a bunch of the nights because of how rough the terrain is.
Yeah, so basically the first day one, which was the 19th of August, you can see here we've all met up at the Bakersfield Pie Shop, which is the ceremonial start of the journey itself, and I believe that's where the crew has actually commenced quite a few trips in the past as well, because they've got great sausage rolls and pies there. So basically we started there, and then we started tracking kind of northeast all through the wheat belt and the goldfields region out to a place called Bullfinch, and that was where our first night of camp was. That was pretty easy going. Most of the time we were keeping a relatively high speed up, kind of between 90 and 100 kilometers an hour roughly. So a lot of it was kind of like highway kind of stuff. and that was really good. Even though a lot of it was still dirt road and things like that, that brought us to our first night of camp. And there's a little aerial shot of the first night's camp setup. You can see just off to the left there, that's my little setup tucked away. And then you've got all the other guys kind of like in a bit of a horseshoe around one big old bonfire, which was absolutely fantastic to see. But yeah, so that first day, pretty easy going in regards to the off-road side of things. It was amazing to see how much water was actually still present in that part of the state, because it's quite a ways inland now, and it's usually a pretty dry part of the country. And you can see here where the guys are on the next day in day 2 were absolutely busting through some amazing kind of water traps that had formed across part of the highway there. And these, for those that are watching on the webcast, this area here is the Salt Lakes area through an area called Menzies, and you can actually see the road as it kind of peels through the center of these. And it is very rare to see these salt lakes actually have that much water in them. Most of the time, they're actually like a stark white salt lake that's usually pretty dry. So we've had some huge rainfall lately, and yeah, that was really good to see.
I think I'm just gonna kind of click through these photos, and you can talk about them as we go here, and then we'll jump back into the questions after we go through the photos. But if you guys are listening to this podcast, if you get a chance, you really should go check out the video for this podcast online somewhere, and just fast forward far enough, probably to the hour mark, hour 10 mark, when we start going through these pictures, just to check out these awesome photos.
So there's my vehicle. We got to this spot on the main road up to Sandstone, and the water had actually come in quite a bit, and we found this really cool muddy spot on the road, and we thought we'd have a bit of fun there. And pretty much all of us just smashing through, getting the vehicles all kind of muddied up. But unfortunately, one thing I didn't realize, and if you can see this particular photo, my swag is up on the roof of the vehicle.
Oh yeah.
The opening to my swag is normally facing to the rear of the vehicle, so I don't get bugs and stuff splattered over my swag. But unfortunately, I was in that much of a rush to pack up in the morning for filming purposes that the opening to my swag cover was facing forward, which meant that got absolutely soaked with red mud. And
I was looking at that picture. I'm like, is that the wrong end facing forward? Oh no.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you got to learn these lessons somehow. So yeah, that was quite good. And then from here, we continued on to a place called Sandstone. Now in Sandstone, we were trying to get our first major lick of fuel, because the range on the Jimnys with the fully loaded with the 80-litre fuel tank gets us around about 700 kilometers, which isn't all that much considering, how far it is between these stops. And one of the things that we were carrying around with us was extra fuel jerrys. But we managed to find the pub across the road while they were trying to get the Bowser going for the fuel, which they unfortunately didn't. And as a result of that, if you have a look at the next photo, that should be us. No, that's a little bit further on. The next one after that should have been us filling up all of our jerry cans, because we had to actually get into our jerrys pretty early on in the piece. Luckily,
I don't think I ever saw one where you guys are filling jerry cans.
Didn't you? That's okay. But yeah, so basically, we were able to fill up with jerry cans, and one of the guys who was carrying a little bit more than everyone else, he got to Walloona, which was just the previous photo there. When we got to Walloona, we topped up, and he put 78 litres into his 80-litre full fuel tank.
Wow.
Yeah, so he didn't have much left at all, running on fumes. Now, once you get up to places...
Real quick.
Oh, that's what I was gonna do. Yeah.
Let me do it. 700 kilometers in Freedom Eagle miles is 434.96.
Yeah,
Freedom
435
Eagle
miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a huge range. It's enough that if you plan your trips right, you'll be able to get to like fuel stations and stuff like that throughout the outback. And the thing about Wiluna is it's also the start of the actual Gun Barrel Highway itself. And the Gun Barrel Highway is starts at Wiluna and goes all the way through to Warburton, which is, about 1,500 kilometers further on the track. And that's where you are really seeing the challenging off-road stuff and the really full-on rugged nature of the Australian outback, definitely. So you can see us there. That was at the start of it. And we ended up pitching camp in Wiluna, also just out of Wiluna at a place called Vincenti's Pool. And these photos were taken by a fellow that works for Woods Media called Jacob, an absolutely amazing photographer. And the best part about being in the Australian outback is every night the stars just put on an absolute light show for you. So, and that's what we were sleeping under every night, which was absolutely brilliant. So, yeah. But yeah, so that was night 3. And then the start of night 4, we started on the Gun Barrel Highway proper now and leaving Wiluna and heading towards a place called Carnegie Station. And Carnegie Station's kind of the last outpost of civilization before you really start hitting the heavy stuff. This part of the Gun Barrel Highway is actually maintained by the Shire of Wiluna, because there's several mine sites and whatnot and station owners up there that actually use this track to transport in and out of the main metro part of Western Australia and then back up to the northeast. And so that gets maintained. But once you leave Carnegie Station, that's where it goes, hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. And
yeah, this road doesn't look very rough at all right here.
No, yeah. So this is just the first part of the Gun Barrel, which gets graded, nice and easy to drive. It gets a little bit corrugated here and there, and I'm not sure how bad do the corrugations get over in the States on some of the tracks. So pretty bad.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
It can be.
So when you've got like things like the roads being used by the stations and also the trucks and stuff like that, we get some pretty bad corrugations on that side of things. But in order to maintain them, the Shire of Wiluna actually goes through and grades it and keeps it in pretty good nick. So the next one is us getting to Carnegie Station. And Carnegie Station, like I said, is, it's like a I think it's something like 1.5 million acres or something like that. Huge station. And here you can see all the mustering vehicles and whatnot that they use to rustle up all the cattle and everything like that out there. So they've got 500,000 head worth of cattle out there or something along those lines. So yeah, lots of beef.
Couple of those look like Jeeps.
Yeah, there's a couple of Jeeps in there. And I think the next one should be an old Suzuki as well. Or I'm hoping it is. There's one of them which is an old Suzuki.
Oh, there's your fuel up one, huh? Or is this at Carnegie?
This is at Carnegie. So this is the second time that we got a lick of fuel. And it was only about half a tank here because it was about 350 Ks from Wiluna out to Carnegie. So it wasn't too bad. It was about half a tank. The problem is, though, out in that part of the country, they only use a type of fuel called Opal. Now, Opal is there's a reason that they use it. Is unfortunately some people in the area use unleaded fuel to get a bit of a buzz on by sniffing fuel and whatnot, and to stop that, because obviously it's not good for you. They remove those things out of those additives out of the fuel. So disincentivize the idea of sniffing petrol. And what's left over is this stuff called Opal fuel. Now, Opal is really, it's rough. It's not very good fuel economy and things like that. We went from, now I'm not sure what the miles per gallon correlation for this, but the kilometers to, so the liters to 100 Ks. So how many liters I'm using of fuel to per 100 Ks of travel went from 9.9 liters to the 100 Ks to almost 14 liters to the 100 Ks after using this Opal fuel. So yeah, that had a huge detrimental impact on the performance of the vehicles. This here is a fellow called Brendan, and he's the station manager over at Carnegie. I tell you, this guy's got hands like bloody dinner plates. He's rough, tough, proper outback living, and these fellas, they work, bloody hard out there. Really nice lad. And that was one of the good things about Carnegie is you can actually set up and have the campsites out the back, so those tourists passing through, or those adventure seekers like us passing through, can actually go and stay there. And if you're nice enough, they'll actually cook you up a proper homestead dinner as well, which we were lucky enough to get tucked into on that night, so we didn't have to cook that night. They've got an emu pet that hangs around the front of the station, and there's an old red heeler dog and this emu that kind of get around together and whatnot. And this particular emu, if you left your window open, it would kind of peck away and have a bit of a look on the inside of your car and whatnot. So yeah. So then we left Carnegie Station, and on the way out of Carnegie Station, they told us that there was a footy oval. So the guys went for a bit of a kick. And apparently this
a footy what?
Footy oval. So yeah, that's the oval. So that's the station owner's footy ground, and it's basically a cleared out dirt patch with some Australian Football League goals kind of at either end, and they use it for cricket and football. So we stopped there and had a bit of a kick.
Like, soccer, football?
No. So Aussie rules. So think of it like a mix between it's actually nothing like you guys would play at all, to be honest.
Because what's that sport called where they throw the ball to the side?
Gaelic?
No, they call what is it? New Zealand has a team like the Black.
Rugby.
Rugby.
Yeah. So no, it's nothing like. So the three main sporting codes in Australia are AFL, Australian Football League, which is Aussie rules, rugby league, and also cricket. They're the three main sports that we play. Also play soccer, also play rugby union, and also play a couple of other kind of American-centric games like, basketball and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's what happens when you sniff unleaded. You make your own football rules.
So I think it's more what happens when you isolate a population from the rest of the world long enough. Eventually, they just make shit up. But so essentially, they so the AFL game is played on a big oval, and I think you've got, I can't even remember, I think it's like 22 players per team or something. It's a huge game, huge game, and so it's a very popular sport, but all the station owners would get together once a month and play interstation kind of funsies games, and they cleared out a footy oval for it, which is pretty cool. And then so one of the things that you see after leaving Carnegie is the road goes pretty poor after that, because at the point where the Wiluna Shire no longer looks after it, it's no longer maintained, and the actual road is left as a bit of a adventure kind of thing, and it's purposely left very difficult that way. And at this point here, this is a place called Geraldton Bore, and this is one of the last places to get fresh water, drinkable fresh water, for quite a while. And so basically everyone had to go and fill up all of their jerry cans. And I personally use water bladders in the Jimny, because once a water bladder's empty, you can kind of roll it up and it doesn't take up that same kind of space. So after Geraldton Bore was our next campsite, and it was after here was when that was when the road really started turning it on, and the corrugations were horrific. I thought that I'd set my vehicle up really well for the corrugations. It sounded like there was a brass band going on in the back of the Jimny. Unfortunately, everything was just banging around. I was holding on for dear life, and I just thought to myself, what am I doing to my poor little car? And I was, but to its credit, it handled it really well, and I had no major issues. This is the kind of terrain that we ended up having to go throughout the rest of the gun barrel. A lot of these washaways where they would have these rainy periods and it would just wash the track off, and you'd kind of have to try and re-find it again, full of what we call tire stakes, which are old, burnt, dead tree root that is basically like a, bungee sticks that just basically smash your tires apart. So it's full of it all through the area and whatnot. Now, once we left Geraldton, this was, I think, day 5 or day 6, we then cracked onto a place called Mount Bedell. And Mount Bedell, named after Len Bedell, the explorer that went through and mapped out the entire gun barrel highway, as well as thousands of kilometers of other roads and whatnot connecting Australia to the central part of the country. And basically, there's the highest kind of peaked point, which is not very high, let me tell you. It's pretty flat out there, is Mount Bedell. And there's a memorial for Len out there. He's got some of his old surveying equipment that they've built a cage around and turned it into a memorial. So we were able to drive all the way up to the top of the plateau there, get some really amazing shots, which is really cool. And I think there's a couple of shots of us coming back down as well. I'm not sure what the next one is yet. There we go. So heading back down. Unfortunately, photos don't ever do it justice. So you can see there that little, on that next one, that little cagey looking thing that you can kind of see in the left-hand side of the cliff drop off. That's where the actual memorial is. And then the actual drive up on the right-hand side is considerably steeper than it looks in photos. It was quite a decent incline. But over time of people driving up and down it, it's become quite rutted out. And definitely took a bit of low range action to get up there, which was quite fun. But beautiful spot, and the vista from that area was amazing. And then coming down from there, that had us going to from Mount Bedell to Camp Bedell, and that's where we made one of our last camps on the actual gun barrel itself, before we then headed off the next day to the Helena Highway, which was also mapped out by Len Bedell, and also like here we go here, and that was essentially the vistas that we saw throughout the period of this, and it was actually quite interesting because it was a bit of an ever-changing landscape. You'd go through these periods where it would be quite soft red duney sand, then you'd go through periods where it was like this and it was all rutted out. Getting out of first and second gear was a bit of a challenge because the cars would just get rattled to hell, and that was pretty tough. So there's Dave's the Wild Track Jimny, absolutely really well set up. And one of the interesting things was he'd actually set his vehicle up with more stuff on the roof than almost anyone. And quite a few people like, need to be careful, Dave, she'll roll, or she's going to be, really swaying around on the tough part of the tracks. Had no issues whatsoever. Absolutely no issues whatsoever. He absolutely loaded it right up, and he loved it. And then this is what I mean by the changing landscapes. So you'd be going along where it would be pretty sparse, and then all of a sudden you'd have these spinifex fields that would come out of nowhere. these red sand dunes that would kind of come out of nowhere. And every hour that went past, it was basically like you were driving through a different part of the country. And a lot of this part here is actually going through the Gibson Desert, which is pretty much, one of the major deserts here in Western Australia, kind of cutting across that way. And then after we did that part, we got out to the Great Central, which is a major dirt road that goes all the way from Yulara down to Perth. So instead of doing, the Great Central, we did the Gun Barrel, which is like this kind of, tough offshoot adventure side of things. To put it into perspective, it took us 8 nights to get to Yulara doing the Gun Barrel. It took 3 days for me to get home doing the Great Central. So that
ridiculous.
Yeah, so if you can see that in the difference in regards to the kind of terrain, the speed that we were actually able to carry, getting out of first and second gear. I mean, if you got into third gear, you felt like you were doing 100 k's an hour, because it was very, very hard to do that. Would you do this without support? Couple of rigs. You know what? I think you could. And I mean, look, we had 22 Jimnys doing this one, and I think that if you did it with, say, a group of 8, you could quite easily accomplish this kind of trip with just the 8 Jimnys. However, you would have to be very mindful of the fact of what you take. There would be no room for any luxuries, and you'd have to take some spares just to get yourself out of Dodge if something actually went a bit poorly. But yeah, I definitely think you could. I don't think you could do it as fast. Part of the reason why we were able to do it in the 8 days rather than the recommended kind of, like all the other, things I read up about the Gun Barrel prior to doing it, was like, give yourself at least, 12 to 14 days to do this track. And so we did it a fair bit faster. And that was also because we had the support vehicles there and whatnot. Some of the guys offloaded a lot of the stuff out of their Jimnys into a support vehicle and then kind of treated it like it was the Dakar Rally, and absolutely gave their poor little cars a hiding, which was, fantastic for them. And they had an absolute ball doing that. I was a little bit more conservative with mine, and I was, definitely more the authentic micro overlanding experience, I guess you could say. But yeah, how often did we come across other travelers? Not very often, to be honest. So we ran into 3 throughout the entire trip, going, like, obviously once we got to Yulara there was hundreds of them, but the actual Gun Barrel there was 3. There was an old fella that was coming through at the very start of it, and then at the very end we ran into a couple that were going the other way as well, and that was it. So it's not a track that gets attempted very often, and it's also not a track that's super well known. So once we'd left Warburton, which is where we got a bit more fuel, that's when we started heading on to the Great Central. And parts of the Great Central, especially coming up to the Northern Territory, West Australian border, are tarmacked and whatnot. So at that part of it, the really arduous off-roading stuff was pretty much over, and there was, like, I think one more campsite that we hit on the way out. But as you can see here, quite a few of the sections of the Great Central, which is where this photo was taken, do become very corrugated and whatnot, and with that, the damage to vehicles and stuff like that on a trip like this wasn't from the hardcore super off-roady rock crawling kind of stuff. It was more from that constant hammer of the corrugations, constant on the brakes to slow down for washouts, the slow crawl over those periods where you did need to do a bit of rock crawling and then get back on it and then back hammering the car away with the corrugations. Yeah, that was pretty rough. One of the great things about the trip, though, is every night we were absolutely treated to spectacular sunsets and star, the starscapes and stuff were absolutely amazing. So that was good. And that was the last night. Now this shot here, it seems like a strange thing to be wearing such a big jacket what looks like pretty, hot, like a pretty hot kind of climated area. Out in the desert, gets bloody hot during the day, but at night, icicles are forming over stuff. It plummets to below zero quite often, and in the morning it takes a little while to warm up. So hence why I'm wearing a full dryzer bone there. And this particular camp night was the last night before we got to Yulara, and myself and the camera crew got completely lost from the rest of the group, and we didn't know where they went. So we just drove down a dry riverbed and camped in the riverbed, and that was absolutely brilliant. So so we had a quiet night doing a little bit of filming there. And the next, so that was the morning after, and then we headed on to Yulara itself, and then that's where we came across. This is the Olgas, and that was basically the big rock formation, which is the sister to Uluru, to Ayers Rock. You can kind of see Ayers Rock a little bit there in the background. We're doing a little bit of filming there for the 4-Drive Adventure Show on Australian TV here. And there's a guy that you might recognise, which is Ronnie Dahl. We caught up with Ronnie and Torbs in Yulara, doing some filming and whatnot for that national TV show, which is pretty fun. So that's going to be airing in the next couple of weeks with any luck. And and then there she is, Ayers Rock. So we made it. And over the course of the trip, we had 2 flat tires for the Jimnys, and one Jimny had an issue where bolts in a tie rod came loose, and after but fixing that up was fine, and so no major breakdowns for the Jimnys at all. The major breakdowns, however, happened with the support vehicles, and there was 2 F trucks that were carrying some pretty heavy trailers on them, and one of the F truck hitches snapped completely on the trailer, snapped straight through the weld itself, and they had to fly a brand new hitch in to get that done. Yeah. So so that was a bit of a expensive exercise for the owner of that truck, but you get that in the big jobs, I guess.
Can you tell us what an F truck is?
So I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in Fords. So Ford F truck, I think it's an F-250.
Okay, so a full size truck then is what you're talking about when you say F truck.
Yeah.
Okay, so like a half ton, a 3/4 ton, or a 1 ton pickup truck is what we'd call that here. The F-150, F-250, or an F-350.
Right. Yeah. So so we call it like an F truck. Yeah. So the F-250 was the one that. Okay. So there was 2 of those. Now, when that hitch broke, it was actually a bit of a logistical nightmare, because what ended up happening was the hitch itself broke about 400. There's about 120 kilometers left of the gun barrel itself to go, and about 400 k's from where the truck broke to our next campsite. So what had to happen was we all continued on to the next campsite. The guys with that F truck and the broken down trailer stayed with the trailer. One of the guys, which I believe was Dave, drove with the convoy to the next campsite, took the hitch off the serviceable F truck and trailer out to the one that was stranded, and then whilst that was going on overnight, they flew in the new hitch to Warburton, which then got picked up and put on the F truck that had its hitch rabbited for the other one. So there was a lot of moving parts there to get those vehicles back on the road, and it was amazing to see the guys going to come together and get through, what was inevitably going to be a bit of a tough one. We were so surprised that none of the Jimnys broke down. There was no mechanical breakdowns or anything like that. I had one flat, which I found on the morning when we got to Carnegie Station, and that was purely because the valve in my tire wasn't seated properly after I'd aired down. And one other fella got a stick that was about 6 inches long through the sidewall of his tire, and that was what we mean by tire stakes. What happens is fire goes through the area, burns all the trees, and then the roots and stuff that are left over quite hard, and they become basically little spears that go your tires. And so they got one. The camera car got got one, but that was able to be patched up. So yeah, for the Jimneys there was only 2 flats, and then for the rest of the convoy there was only, I believe, only 1. The only other breakdown other than the F Trucks trailer was one of the other trailers completely disintegrated, and the full suspension on it completely blew out, the whole shebang. One of the wheels came off, and they left that at the end of the Helena Highway, and they went to go get parts for it, and by the time they'd gotten back, someone had stolen it. So
Oh no!
yeah, so someone had already taken it, but they weren't too heartbroken about it, because it was only like it was a last minute thing that they bought. It wasn't like a big Patriot camper or anything. It was just $1,000 secondhand camper trailer that they'd bought off Facebook Marketplace or something. Yeah, but still, it was to have it completely. We got back there, and there's actually, I've got to find it. There's actually a photo of us, and we made a makeshift crucifix and hammered it into, and we're all standing there with our hats and bowed heads because of the disappearing. What I would have imagined it would have been was like that Nick Cage movie, Lord of War, where he lands the plane and then overnight it just gets completely taken apart. I'm assuming that's what happened to it. Yeah. So, but yeah, so then we cracked on with that. So, but no, it was a really good experience overall. It was certainly a tougher kind of overlanding trip than I'm used to, due to the furious pace that was kind of being set, and the packing up every morning, back on the trail, driving to basically the sun was about to go down, setting up camp again, back up before the sun was up, pack up again, off you go. So yeah, we were doing usually about 8 to 9 hours of driving every day, and if not more, and then it was
That sounds like the kind of trips I lead.
Yep.
Yeah, making camp when the sun goes down. So, but yeah, so it was. Look, it was definitely good. If I was to do it again, and I was to do it, and I was to plan it, I would probably take the full 12 days to do it, and I would either shorten the distance between campsites by a couple of hours each day, and then spend a little bit longer in camp, or I'd do the same kind of driving, but I would then spend an extra day at a campsite or something like that, just to kind of have a bit of a break and cook up some decent meals and whatnot. Because one of the things I learnt was, when you're filming all day and all that kind of stuff, when it came time for cooking, it doesn't really happen. You end up cooking whatever's the easiest thing in the back of your car, and the big elaborate, camp banquets that I do like to cook with, the Dutch ovens and the smoked this and all that kind of stuff, didn't happen at all.
Jeremy could not stand that. Jeremy has to have the most elaborate camper food possible.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you here.
Sure.
These 3 tents here, what are they? Are they swags with like rain flies, or?
So these ones are interesting. This is it's actually quite funny. Hang on, just wait. During the breakdown, did mobile phones work, or did you have other means of communication? So no, there was no mobile phone coverage. Everything was done via two-way. And when it came to communicating with the rest of the group, everything was UHF. When it came down to contacting the guys to get the new part flown up, that was done by the 2 sat phones that we had. So there was no mobile phone coverage, nothing like that. Yeah, it was just a sat phone. But those particular funny looking swag tent things, so they are absolutely brilliant. They are made by my sponsor, Wild Track Leisure Australia, and what they are is a stretcher tent. So basically everything is folded into the stretcher itself. Everything's connected to the stretcher. You can take the rain fly off completely and sleep under the stars, or the whole thing folds into itself to basically be just this little kind of square swaggy bunker thing. It's they're really quite cool. The best thing about them is that they only weigh, I think they only weigh 13 or 14 kilos, and that means weight saving wise, which is, I'm not sure how much that is in pounds, but weight saving wise for the micro overlander side of things was a huge plus. So quite a few guys use those. I prefer to use a traditional canvas swag, so cotton canvas on a stretcher, and out there you've got to have a stretcher. There is no sleeping on the ground. If you sleep on the ground out there, you're asking for trouble. So snakes, spiders, things like that.
Does trouble start with an S and goes?
100% it does. So yeah, always definitely. There you go. Just under 11 kilos. Got the Brains Trust over at Wild Track there to tell us. So yeah, absolutely brilliant piece of kit actually. And one of the things with the Jimny and micro overlander stuff, you'll hear me say it 100 times through my videos, and also I've said it on this podcast before, space is a premium, and you have to be very deliberate with what you take. Unlike the big rigs where you can kind of throw everything in and then kind of, go, oh, well, lucky I didn't need that or whatever. You are only taking what you actually need to use, and you have to make sacrifices where possible. But yeah, so that, yeah, excellent. There it is. So, and because it's really nice and lightweight, less than 11 kilos, when the Jimny has a manufacturer's recommended roof load rating of less than 50 kilos, if you're putting, like a huge, 30 kilo tent system or something up there, you're really limiting yourself on what else you can carry. So that leaves you almost, 30, 40 kilos to use with just a really good little piece of kit. Yeah.
Those are cool. I'm on their website looking at them now going,
But yeah, I was looking at too. Their website, Ben, and I don't know if Wild Track is still listening to the show or not, but their website says free shipping over $99. So maybe we should buy it and free shipping.
So I don't know if it's only in Australia or not. Or, so yeah, if you're listening,
well, is it Washington is in Australia, right? And Ben lives in Washington.
WA.
WA, that's it.
Wow.
So yeah, they make an amazing stuff, and so I'll take this opportunity to thank Wild Track Leisure Australia for inviting me out on this particular trip, and the support that they've given me with the Mighty Overlander has been absolutely phenomenal. Definitely check them out. They make some really, really good quality gear at a good price point, especially given how everything's getting more expensive and how camping can very quickly turn into an expensive hobby. It was one of those things where you go, oh, well, the good thing about camping is that once you've got your tent, you don't have to pay for accommodation and stuff like that. And that never ends up being the case, because you always end up buying another tent. You always end up buying more gear. You end up, oh, that looks cool. And you buy and buy and buy. So it can actually add up. But when you're getting good quality gear for a decent price, they're pretty good. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any other sponsors you want to shout out besides Wild Track?
Thanks to Warren. Thanks, Andy. So yeah, they've been amazing over the time, supporting us as well, and also Throttle Grenade. So Throttle Grenade's the guys that I use for my throttle controller, and yeah, they're really good as well. They're definitely an amazing piece of kit.
It looks like they only ship it within Australia.
Spion. But yeah, so it was definitely a good trip overall. Like I said, the experience of doing some proper Central Australian overlanding was awesome. Like I've said before, my focus tends to be more on the fishing waterways, that kind of overlanding, where I'll go somewhere, I'll drive out for a day to stay somewhere for 2 days, then drive onto another spot and stay there for another 2 days, kind of fishing my way up a river system or something along those lines. this was a completely different experience where the actual activity was just the driving. That was the activity. So it was, the actual journey between spots, proper true overlanding, and so that was quite fun. We took in total about 2 terabyte worth of footage.
Nice.
So lots and lots of footage. So keep an eye out on both myself, the Mighty Overlanders YouTube channel, and Wild Track's YouTube channel, because there's 4 episodes on both channels coming out. There's going to be 4 episodes, which is going to be the greater trip for the Wild Track stuff, and then there's also going to be 4 episodes on my channel, which is my personal experience and a more of a behind the scenes kind of look at how the trip went from an individual's point of view. Then there's also going to be some stuff on, so from anyone in Australia, or you want to jump online and have a look at Channel 7 at the 4Drive Adventure Show, then there's going to be that show as well. They'll have, I think, a 10-minute spot on that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, should be really, really good. And I'm very much looking forward to finishing up the editing of my side of things, because I think my experience was a little bit different to everyone else's, because it was more of a working trip for me, where I was filming, narrating, presenting, doing a lot of product demonstration stuff and everything like that. It was a little bit of a different experience for me than it was for the guys who were pretty quick to get into camp and crack a cold one. There was a few of the lads that even put me to shame as a seasoned sailor and whatnot. So they definitely enjoyed themselves. So, but yeah, all up, 38 people went on the trip, 22 Jimnys and 5 support vehicles.
Well, right on. Well, where can people find that mighty overlander that you are?
So Mighty Overlander, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Mighty Overlander and you will find it. And you'll also see a fair bit of my content popping up on the Wild Track website and Wild Track Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook page as well. But yeah, get on board with that. Just about to hit 6,000 followers on Instagram, and that means it's giveaway time, and I'll be giving away one of those swags. So one of the swags that I use, not the tent one, the swags that I use, the canvas swags.
Well,
so yeah,
is it
yeah.
Is it the swag that got covered in mud?
It's that actual swag. Yes, my actual one. That's and look, I tell you, on a big trip like that, one of the most important pieces of advice that I can give is look after your bedding and look after your swag and whatnot. You don't get an opportunity to shower. You don't get an opportunity to do stuff like that when it's that fast and furious. You're up, you're packed up, you're on the road, you're packed, setting back up again, back in a bed, and you're just, kind of smashing through. I think the longest period we went without showering was about 6 days, and you're getting pretty, pretty funky by that stage. So look after your bedding and whatnot.
You don't even have to sniff gasoline. You can just smell yourself.
Yes. It was pretty, I think the term is swamp ass or something. But basically it was pretty gnarly by the end of it. And when we actually got to Yulara itself, that's where we stayed at one of the Yulara hotels there. And once everyone got there, boom, people were taking 2 and 3 showers to get themselves, fully cleaned up and everything. There's red dust absolutely everywhere. So for sure.
Well, we just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us weekly, and also those who watch us live on YouTube. We really, what?
You're still loud.
Am I so
loud? There we go. Turn you down a little.
I sent a message in our private chat asking if I was too loud because you said turn myself up. But how's that? Is that better?
That's like perfect.
All right, go ahead and mark it in the notes to make sure we edit that one out. Then.
All right, 150.
Before we wrap up, we just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us weekly, and also to those who watch us live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, wherever else we are. Facebook. Oh, that's the other one. We really appreciate you guys, especially you guys who stick around to the end of the show. Please share us with your friends. That's what really helps us grow. And God bless Australia and God bless America.
Thanks, guys, and thanks very much for having me on the show again.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to visit Patriot Patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. Check out our Gaia affiliate link for up to 40% off. Also, don't forget to head over to Warren Medical Gear Outfitters and Colby Valve to see all their great gear. We're a proud part of the Firearms Radio Network. Got a comment or question? Send it to us through our webpage at firearmsradio.net or through our social media channels by searching for Off-Road Podcast. Also, you can listen to us live at overlandradio.com Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. When off-road, please remember to have fun, tread lightly, be safe, and courteous. Thanks for listening.
Did Ben just warp to Australia?
I'm in Australia now, guys. Can't you tell?
For those listening, Ben
Hey.
is a